From SOEs and talk about something that we as investors put our money in on a day-to-day basis. That's the market. Kyle Burgess, portfolio manager at Nedbank Private Wealth, joins us for some analysis. Always good to speak to you, Kyle.
Good to see you again, Gig.
The last few Fridays have actually been quite fantastic because every time we touch base, the Aussie actually seems to be pushing up a lot further. So is this an us or them market dynamic or just increased optimism?
So I think we've had a really good week, but a much better month, in fact. So since the beginning of June, or since the middle of June, we've seen equity markets rally with the JSE all share up, 2,000, 3,000 points, getting very close to record highs. But in amongst all of this, we've seen the S&P 500, or a lot of companies in the S&P 500 reporting results. The majority of those beating analyst estimates. So that's been very positive. We've also had the US central bank and central banks around the world actually just kind of taking a more dovish view. So the dollar's been a bit weaker, but yeah, so a lot of guys getting involved in emerging markets as risk appetite increases. And yeah, so it's been a great week.
It has certainly, but let's also pick up on some dynamics that we see from a company results perspective. Barclays Africa out with numbers today, and interesting to see how the different reporting has taken place regarding Barclays PLC suffering a loss from the Africa sale, and how Barclays here locally is seeing firmer dynamics across the continent. Yeah,
so it's quite difficult to look through the numbers because you do have a 12 billion rand sort of inflow of the separation fee that they've received from Barclays PLC. So what they've done is they've separated that out because if you didn't separate it out, there's a bit of a drag on the ROE. So with it in, it's the ROEs at around 16.1. If you strip that out, it's around 16.8. So it does make a material difference for them. So what we've seen is a bit of top-line sort of pressure on Barclays in their last sort of results. That down 1%. What management have done particularly well is contain costs, which was down about 6%. So they've done a good job in terms of that. There is certainly quite a lot happening in the African market at the moment. But I think if you look at the broader environment, there's it's the beginning of sort of earnings season for banks. So I think they're the first to report. We've got Nedbank reporting next week as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how they stack up with the other bank, given the fact that they've got this 12 billion rand sort of inflow.
What are your expectations regarding what we've seen from some of the other banks, which have proven to be quite resilient, especially after 2016 was not a great year for economic performance, but enhanced pressures on consumers. We've got the downgrade that we need to take into consideration. Are we expecting our banks to be as resilient as what we saw a year ago?
I think they'll be fairly resilient. I'm not expecting them to shoot the lights out. They certainly haven't in the last sort of 2 or 3 years, but really provided solid earnings, and I think that'll continue. I'm quite interested to see how their top line growth will have come through, particularly with Nedbank FirstRand. It'll be a very interesting set of results for sure.
Well, looking forward to those when they are released next week. Let's touch on another company also impacted by a variety of issues, and most evidently is Nigeria. MTN. After that update yesterday, that share price certainly took a beating.
Yeah, so a bit surprising. I mean, down 7%, and we've discussed this many times that MTN share price really has come under pressure. But if you have a look at it, I think a lot of market participants been quite disappointed by that. Not so long ago, Nigeria was a very big portion of MTN's earnings. But if you have a look at it now, it's 20% of earnings. They released the trading statement, so they're releasing results, I think, on the 3rd of August, if I'm not mistaken, so next week. And if you look at the MTN investment case as a whole, they really operate in a lot of different regions. They're the market leader in most of these regions, and there is structural growth happening in these regions. So I think if you, as a long-term investor, you need to keep that in mind and just remember the long-term investment case for the company.
Do you think there's value in it at 119? It's 1% firmer today, so clearly some investors are buying.
Yeah, so I think just probably a bit of a dead cat bounce with seeing a 7% sell-off. Yeah, there certainly is value in it, but I think it's going to be, you'll have to wait for that value to come through. There's a new management, excuse me, there's a new management team that I'm quite excited about, and I think we'll obviously see a lot of once-offs, which we will see in the results. But it'll be interesting to see the next 2-3 years how they perform. I certainly am quite excited about it.
Sure, looking forward to the long term. An unfair question, but MTN versus Vodacom versus Telkom, which might be your bet there? I'm not even sure if we can throw in Blue Label Telecoms in there after the Cell C acquisition.
So I mean, look, based on price, Vodacom has performed exceptionally well, and
and a good dividend payer, right?
Absolutely. So I think a lot of it hangs off. You mentioned dividend is very important, and a lot of these telco players, people buy it because of the wonderful dividends that they pay. So if we see some pressure on MTN's dividends, I think that'll go a long way in telling us, if it's still attractive or not.
What about another sector that's also seen slight improvements? That's certainly from the mining division, Kumba, Anglo, boosting some investor confidence with impressive dividends as well that we saw this week after they results announcements.
Yeah, it's been fantastic between sort of the retailers that have re-rated,
Yeah.
you know, the miners that have done particularly well, you know, on the back of, you know, prices that have increased. You know, it's really driven the all-share index. So, yeah, no, it seems good.
Would you be picking up any of these stocks? I mean, Kumba, sure, they might have rallied in the short term, but over the long term, some pressures on those share prices.
Yeah, it really just depends, I think, on you know, the iron ore price. So I think we're keeping a close eye on that. I think Anglo's resumed their dividend again, and that's you know, on the back of Kumba releasing strong results. You know, Anglo American Platinum also releasing the Kolomela mine released some solid results. So yeah, looking forward to that.
I'm sure you get this question all the time from your clients, and I recall it was a big theme at the beginning of the year when we had a lot of rand volatility. Are they still looking to internationalize their money?
I don't think as much as they were sort of about a year ago, I don't think. I think people have, you know, sort of settled down with the rand being at these levels. Any money that they wanted to take out, I think they've already made that decision. And just, I certainly think they're still keeping a very close eye on them. That's for sure.
Thank you so much for your time, Carl. We'll leave it there for today. That was Carl Burgess, who's from Nedbank Private Wealth, giving us an update on the market dynamics.